Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Politically Virgin. I'm here with my partner in crime, Amir. How are you doing?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Amir. I'm your co-host for today's podcast. Yeah, I'm doing fine, Ali. How's everything with you?
Oh, I'm a little bit tired. I had, but perhaps our listeners should know too that I make another podcast called Travel Junkie. It's about travel. So last night I was up until 3 a.m. Recording another episode with a friend of mine. Well, she is a photographer, or at least an aspiring travel photographer, and we had a very, very interesting chat about getting grants, getting people comfortable when it comes to travel photography, everything. So, yeah, I'm a little bit tired, and then I'm a little bit shook because when I woke up this morning, actually, when I was done with the podcast, Travel Junkie last night, I went online to see what was going on, and I read the news about what's going on in the US, and I was really, really shook. It was unbelievable what was going on. So let's talk about that to begin with. What's going on
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
US?
yeah. The news was actually indeed shocking to me. Also, it was unprecedented. I think the last time that this happened was in the 1800s, that a group of
Yeah.
people stormed the Capitol of the United States, the Congress, and they actually made it inside.
Yes.
And I was very surprised to see that because some people call it the uh, you know the white privilege in flesh. Like if you're white, you can storm the Capitol and get to the houses to the Senate speaker seat. But if you're a black person, if you're protesting in the street, you might get killed.
Well, not only if you're protesting, and just even if you're walking in the street, if you're black or Hispanic, you might get harassed by the police and by people also. And that's what I heard it twice. The point you're making. Stephen Colbert in his monologue exactly pointed that the police didn't really stop those people from coming in. Well, maybe they didn't expect it. It took the National Guard a long time to come, and it was actually the vice president who organized the National Guard to come in. The police forces from neighboring areas from Baltimore, Maryland, etc., had to be called. And in the beginning, Trump tweeted and said, be peaceful. He said, remain peaceful, as in to say, remain in the Capitol building. I love you. You're doing something fine. I approve it. But don't hurt the police. It took him actually a couple hours more to release a Twitter video and ask for the evacuation of that building. And so what was really interesting to me was that like 11 a.m. today, our time, that's late night in the US, the Congress got back to work. Vice President came back, and I loved this line. He said, let's get back to business, or let's get back to work. Everybody, except Trump, with the exception of Trump himself, everybody else is condemning these invasion, let's call it, this mob. The word they're using is, so let's talk about the wars that has been going on. Incite violence, that's what the president did.
Yeah,
And
exactly, exactly.
we're talking about a mob that invaded the Capitol, the building where the Congress is. So yeah, it
Yeah.
was definitely interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. What was actually another interesting thing, another interesting news that I read just a couple of hours ago was that Facebook and Twitter actually banned the president for, I think, 12 and 24 hours respectively.
Yeah.
And they said if this is a repeated offense, we will suspend you indefinitely because this is definitely inciting violence. And nonetheless, from the president of the United States, I mean, that's how shocking and surreal things are getting.
No, not well. Shocking, yes. Surreal, I don't know. I don't know if I would agree with that characterization. Last week, I was watching a little bit of TV on YouTube. And
Mhm.
do you remember Charlie Sheen? Do you remember Two and a Half Men?
I haven't seen Two and a Half Men. I haven't watched the series, but Charlie Sheen is
Yeah.
the subject of so many controversies. Yeah, I know about him.
Yeah. So the show is actually like 12 seasons. At the end of season 8, so Charlie Sheen is the star of that show for 8 seasons. At some point, he calls his boss a Jew dyke or something like that, right? And he gets sacked. He
Yeah.
gets fired from the show. Now, this is interesting. John Cryer was the other man. Two and a Half Men was Charlie Sheen, John Cryer, and a little boy who grows up on the show. That's the story of Two and a Half Men, two brothers and their kid, one of their kids. The thing that John Cryer knew Charlie Sheen for a long, long time. In 2016, he compared Trump to Charlie Sheen in the sense that people either forgive or forget what these people do. So there is this thing about being a celebrity, being a Hollywood celebrity, that gives you a lot of immunity, a lot of protection when it comes to
Yes.
committing act of violence. In the 2016 campaign, Trump famously said, "I can shoot somebody down on the Fifth Avenue in New York and not lose any votes."
Yeah.
So yes,
That's
in a
actually
sense,
what
he's
he's
like Charlie
counting on.
Sheen. Well,
Yeah, if you look at it, he's actually doing that. He's making calls that are insanely criminal. I mean, if you just hear the audio, that is a very corrupt call, and it would be very hard for anybody to try to defend this kind of call. But Trump calls it a perfect call. He says another perfect call, and they are going on another witch hunt and such and such. That is just astonishing how he thinks he can get away with everything.
You're talking about the phone call he had with the lieutenant governor of Georgia, or
Yeah. No,
that
the
was
first
another
one and the second one. Yeah.
The first one and the second. I only know
The first
of one.
one to the Ukrainian president in the past, and now, yeah.
The perfect call. Okay, so for our listeners to know, he in the call he famously asked that the state of Georgia should go and find him 11,799, something like that, votes. No, 1100, 800, so that he will win by 1 vote. And that's actually a crime, to solicit election fraud. It's a state crime. It's a Georgia state crime. It's also a federal crime. I don't know if he will face the consequences. Of course, we in the last episodes, we briefly touched on what Trump might face once he doesn't have the protections of the office of presidency. They call them the executive privilege. Executive privilege is something a president can claim because he's the president. He doesn't have to release information on certain, and he doesn't get indicted by anybody in the U.S. While he's president. Indictment. Do you want to tell us what indictment means?
I'm not sure about the legal aspects of it, but as I understand, indictment is when you are charged with a crime and then you have to appear in court or in proceedings.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good definition. It's the formal declaration of a start of a judicial process. So they tell you that you're being investigated for such and such crime. That's the word indictment, and it's a little bit hard to write. So it's INDICT. The C is silent in between, so many people get confused with that. So he very well might be indicted for a lot of different crimes. Many of them go back to before he was president. So those are probably regarding tax fraud and wire fraud. In the US and in many European countries, it's a thing. You might get more prison years for tax evasion than you would get maybe for murder. You know what I mean? So if you steal something, you might get 5 years. But if you don't pay your taxes, 16 years maybe. So that's a thing. He might be in real trouble.
Yeah, I think there's some justification in that, because if you murder one person, you're just killing one person. But if you're not paying a huge, hefty amount of tax, you may be depriving a lot of people of the services that rely on those tax money, and you may well kill a lot more than one person.
Yeah, yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, we can have a debate
Mm,
on that, but I don't believe we would really
yeah,
disagree.
these are
Plus the fact that,
yeah.
there's a difference between a crime of passion. Crime of
Hmm.
passion is something like a momentary rage. You're in a bar, you're
Yeah.
drunk, and you get into a fight. That's one thing. But if you go and plan a murder, that's called premeditated
Hmm.
murder. And that's one of the reasons we have murder one, murder two, murder three in many, many different countries. So even murder, if you kill somebody, it depends on the conditions. You're still convicted, of course, but between murder one and murder two, you could get 20 years for murder two. For murder one, you can get death sentence or life imprisonment.
Hmm.
All of that. Yeah. In other related news,
Oh,
um,
let me say this. One of the videos I was watching today about the Capitol news, there was this comment below the video that I really liked. It said, elect a clown, expect a circus. And that was really funny to me. That is what the situation is right now. This clown has been a president for 4 years, and now
uh,
the circus is approaching its crescendo.
yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that if you look at the elections in many of these contested states like Georgia, Nevada, many Republicans voted for Joe Biden. And at the same
Hmm.
time, they voted for a Republican representative to the Congress or a Republican senator. So
Hmm.
that tells me that many, many people stay true to their ideology. And we're going to be talking about that later in about, libertarian and capitalism and all of that. They stay true to
Hmm.
their ideology of lower taxes, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to Trump, they really understood the threat. And so, yeah, that's one of the reasons Georgia elected two Democrats to the Senate. And now
Hmm.
we have 50 Republicans in the Senate and 50 Democrats. That means that when there is a tie, it's the vice president, Kamala Harris, who will be, she will have the power to break the tie. And effectively, the Democrats have the presidency, they have the House, and they have the Senate. And
Hmm.
Warnock, this black guy, is the first ever black person to be a reverend, no less, to be elected to Senate from Georgia. Georgia is a southern state. They call it the Deep South.
Hmm.
This is where the
Yeah.
Confederacy began. You know what I mean? And also, going back to the news of the protest or insurrection, whatever it is called, the invasion of the Capitol, I saw some Confederate flags. And that was interesting too. Why
Where
they
did you see
bring
it? Inside the yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah, some of them
actually,
had Confederate flags.
yeah. One interesting thing that I read today was that this is the first time that the Confederate flag was inside the Capitol. They say it didn't even happen during the Civil War. That is actually quite
Yeah.
astonishing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't, let's get a little bit deeper. Now, a lot of people are pointing to the US and saying, look, it happens there. So this is, Mitch McConnell was actually saying this is the kind of thing that happens in banana republics. That's another interesting term, a banana republic, as
Yeah,
opposed to a real democracy. You know what I mean? And
yeah, yes.
whenever something similar happens in some African countries, the US is the first to condemn the whatever it is that they condemn, the violence, the
Hmm.
stealing of the election. And this is happening in the US. But of course, the good thing is, like, it isn't happening. They had a momentary I don't know what it is. But at the end of the day, they came back to the capital and they kept the session going on. And
Mhm.
but just so you know,
Exactly. I think that's a difference between a working democracy and a show-off democracy. So when something like this happens, the mechanisms that were put in place to prevent such events would be activated, and it just goes back to normal. And that would be a working democracy. But well, yeah, in some countries, that is the precursor to some very more dangerous things like a coup or something like that.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's all good. I actually was listening to. Okay, well, let's move on to a different
Okay, yeah,
topic.
that was our first piece of news. And in the second piece of news, I want to shortly point at the cryptocurrency market. The crypto market has been on the uprise like since I think 2.5 months ago. But it's really outperforming itself. Like the cryptocurrency, the most dominant one, Bitcoin, which has topped before in 2018 at $20,000, right now is being traded at about $38,000, almost a double of the previous all-time high. And the cryptocurrency market is going along with it. Like a lot of people are getting uh, rich again these days from the crypto market. Uh, are you active? Do you follow the crypto market at all?
No, not really. Yeah, somehow I
Yeah,
no, no,
yeah. The
no.
technology was really amazing to me, and how you can have this system of like accountability and financial transparency without any auditor or without any authority. Yeah, I got really interested in it, and I'm a little bit involved in the market. It's all good fun. Yeah, I recommend reading a little bit about it to everybody. Maybe we do an episode about it. But it's
Okay.
interesting to know about these concepts. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually watched a John Oliver episode on that. It's a technical issue, actually, how the
Mhm.
encryption goes on. I know a little bit about that, but well, nah, it's good in a sense that you can have money transactions that are untraceable, basically, with
Mhm.
Bitcoin and such. But at the end, there is another side to it, and that's that those are not transparent, uh, at least to the government. So yeah,
Mhm.
we'll have an episode on that.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Uh,
Okay. So,
let's. Okay, I want to briefly mention two more pieces of news. Actually, three.
okay.
Last week in Argentina, abortion was legalized. Now,
Mm,
why is it important? Argentina is one of the most Catholic conservative countries in the world. And in the Southern American continent, that's the first country to approve abortion. But now there are these concerns about whether people, medical workers and such, are actually going to go through with it and are going to comply with the um, this mandate. Did you hear anything about that?
no, actually, now that you're saying it, it's the first time that I'm hearing about the news, and it's pretty interesting, actually. And do you think there are worries that the healthcare workers wouldn't go along with it because of religious beliefs?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Pers-
one of the things to concern. And well, but overall, it's good news. I mean, it's
Mhm.
listen. I am not in favor of abortion. Uh, in any sense of the word, it's. I understand it's a very complicated topic,
Mhm.
but if the thing about it, and this is one of the things I heard when I was listening to the news. One woman would say, if it's illegal, people who do have money will get abortion whenever they need because they can afford it. They can go to a private doctor and get it done. But
Mhm.
if it is illegal, people who are poor will have to do it in very sketchy, unsafe conditions. And that could that could endanger the life of the mother, the woman. So that's part of the reason to make it safe. But of course, there has to be a broader discussion about health in general. Let's go back to the US, and with the pandemic going on, many people are now talking about universal healthcare, or as they call it in the US, Medicare for all. It was interesting that on CNN, I was watching a piece of news about the vaccine, and they were comparing the rollout, the vaccination numbers of the United States and England and some other countries. And those other countries had a centralized healthcare system, like the UK. And those numbers were more efficient. They had a better rate of getting the job done. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about healthcare in our long discussion about libertarianism. Another thing. Going back, as long as we're talking about COVID and pandemic, Moderna was yesterday approved in Europe. So now in Europe also there are 2 vaccines approved. That's good. Moderna, unlike the Pfizer has to be kept at like minus 100 degrees or so. This can be kept at minus 22, so that's more efficient to shipping and all of that. So, and ultimately, Google. I posted a story about Google on our Instagram, Olive Podcast, about Google employees unionizing. That is the first time ever a giant tech employee is unionized to oppose, this such a company, and that was really interesting to me. Did you hear about that?
No, that's quite a news to me also, because there are a lot of talk that Google and big tech companies like that, apart from controlling the world, in some sense they are nudging the world in different ways. But the more immediate concern is what they do with their own workers. And hearing that they are unionizing, that's a very good news. What do you think they are trying to achieve in these unions? What are the immediate goals that they are trying to pursue?
Well, to put it in a nutshell,
the AI? Did you hear about the AI expert who had also a sort of a fallout with Google and left Google, and there was some stories around that?
That's part of the news. Okay, let's. This is such an interesting topic. Let's table it for one of our future episodes. What do you say? Because we've been going on for half an hour of news, so we should get to.
It's getting complicated.
Yeah. We'll do it later. No worries.
Okay.
Google is gonna be here for the foreseeable future.
It's a hot topic for now.
Yeah.